Picture this. A Chinese fighter jet attempts to land on a U.S. aircraft carrier. Instantly, alarms blare across the vessel as the crew transitions to full emergency status. The world watches in suspense, especially against the backdrop of rising U.S.-China tensions. How did an adversary's aircraft manage to get so close to an American carrier? Was this an unintentional mistake or a calculated move to gauge the U.S. Navy's readiness? Let's explore the details of this fascinating hypothetical situation. If this scenario unfolded in reality, how would the United States respond? Would it act decisively to neutralize the threat or opt for diplomatic measures to prevent escalation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The reasons behind a Chinese jet approaching a U.S. carrier could be varied. It could be a defection attempt, a navigation error, or a deliberate provocation designed to test the U.S. Navy's response mechanisms. The U.S. Navy operates under strict protocols in such scenarios. Upon detecting an unidentified aircraft, air traffic controllers immediately demand identification and clarification of the aircraft's intent. If the pilot fails to respond, armed fighters are rapidly deployed to intercept and escort the aircraft away from the carrier's vicinity. Meanwhile, command centers implement emergency procedures, coordinating with nearby units to prepare for potential threats. Communication with Chinese authorities would also be initiated to avoid misunderstandings and prevent unnecessary escalation. U.S. aircraft carriers are not just warships. They are self-contained floating cities that house thousands of personnel and serve as powerful symbols of strategic dominance. These carriers are meticulously prepared to counter threats from the air, sea, and underwater. However, China has been advancing its military aviation capabilities to challenge U.S. supremacy. Chinese fighters like the J-10, J-11, J-16, and the stealthy J-20 represent their growing aviation prowess, designed to rival American aircraft like the F-15, F-16, and the cutting-edge F-35. Despite these advancements, the F-35 remains superior in several critical aspects. Its advanced stealth technology significantly reduces radar visibility, making it harder for adversaries to detect. Equipped with state-of-the-art sensors, including the AESA radar, the F-35 can locate, identify, and target threats at long distances, even in complex combat environments. Furthermore, its sophisticated networking capabilities enable seamless information sharing with other units, creating a highly integrated and effective combat network. Chinese fighters, while technologically advanced, still lag in key areas like reliability and real-world combat experience. Issues such as the durability of components and the stability of electronic systems hinder their performance in high-pressure scenarios. Additionally, the lack of extensive combat testing limits their operational readiness. While China has made impressive strides in closing the technological gap with the West, significant improvements in reliability, tactics, and deployment strategies are needed to achieve true parity. History offers lessons for such scenarios. In 1988, a Soviet Mi-8 helicopter unexpectedly landed on the USS Yorktown in the Black Sea during what was supposed to be a goodwill visit. This incident caused a diplomatic stir, but was eventually resolved through skilled negotiations. Another notable incident occurred in 2001 when a U.S. EP-3 surveillance aircraft collided with a Chinese J-8 fighter over the South China Sea. The U.S. aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing on Hainan Island, resulting in a tense 11-day standoff. These examples underscore the importance of open communication channels to prevent misunderstandings from spiraling into larger conflicts. If a Chinese fighter jet were to land on a U.S. carrier without authorization, it would be viewed as a grave violation of sovereignty. The U.S. would likely respond with strong diplomatic demands for explanations from Beijing. Should China fail to provide satisfactory answers, the situation could escalate further. The U.S. might release footage and evidence to rally international support, turning the incident into a global public relations battle. The implications of such an event would ripple across the Asia-Pacific region. U.S. allies like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines, which rely on American military power for regional stability, would face immense pressure to respond. These nations would need to carefully navigate their positions, balancing support for the U.S. with the economic and political risks of antagonizing China. In such a scenario, allied nations might assist the U.S. through intelligence sharing, diplomatic backing, or even direct military contributions to present a unified response. However, countries with significant economic ties to China could hesitate, fearing that active involvement might escalate tensions and damage their own interests. International law plays a crucial role in such situations. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, provides a framework for maritime operations, granting military aircraft and vessels the right to navigate international waters while respecting the sovereignty and safety of other nations. An unauthorized landing by a Chinese jet on a U.S. carrier would constitute a clear breach of international norms, giving the U.S. a strong legal basis for action. Regional organizations such as ASEAN and the East Asia Summit provide vital platforms for dialogue and trust building. Additionally, bilateral mechanisms like the U.S.-China Strategic and Economic Dialogue offer opportunities to address shared concerns and reduce the risks of escalating tensions. Following such an incident, both the U.S. and China would likely engage in intense diplomatic activity, aiming to shape international opinion and gain support from global stakeholders. While dialogue could temporarily ease tensions, the deep-seated mistrust between the two powers creates a precarious foundation for future relations. The U.S. might demand a formal apology and assurances from China to prevent similar incidents, while China could downplay the event or shift blame onto the U.S. If tensions continue to rise, the U.S. might impose economic sanctions, such as restrictions on technology exports or trade embargoes, to weaken China's military capabilities. Additionally, the U.S. could bolster its military presence in the region or conduct assertive freedom of navigation operations to showcase its resolve. However, any misstep or overreaction by either side could spark a larger conflict, drawing in other nations and destabilizing the region. In this scenario, intelligence and surveillance would be critical. Both nations would deploy resources such as satellites, drones, and reconnaissance aircraft to monitor military activities. U.S. intelligence agencies would work to assess China's intentions and capabilities, enabling swift and effective response strategies. The key question remains: could such a tense situation escalate into direct military confrontation? Which nations would align with the U.S., and how would global alliances shift in response? Share your thoughts in the comments section.